Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button. I am one of your hosts, Alejandro. With me is the gentle giant.
Paul, hey everybody.
How you doing, my gigantic friend?
Joint pain.
Yeah.
That's how I'm doing. Besides that, though, it's great. I get a lot of respect from people that normally wouldn't get it, you know?
Yes. But here's what's funny. Before I mentioned gentle giant, I have not been over the fact that you're 6'5". When I learned that with that meme of the Sephiroth size.
I did not realize that was going to be the case, because when you see all the main characters of the game and you see the villain is so much taller, you're just thinking, oh, just some unnamed really tall amount, and then you hear it and it just bothers you immensely, because I don't know why I thought that like Cloud was a lot taller, being like a super soldier, but apparently I'm Sephiroth. Who would have thought?
And I'm a slightly taller than Cloud, because Zack apparently is Cloud size, so...
Gosh, and it said like 5'10" for him, didn't it?
Yes. No, 5'9", because
5'9", it's even worse.
Yeah, because I'm the size of Riku. Apparently Riku's taller.
What the heck? Like, you won't think, I mean, maybe Riku for freaking Kingdom Hearts 2 and 3,
or 3 like later one. Yeah. All of them, because they were like kids.
So, I know, freaking, oh my gosh. It's hilarious. I can't get enough of it. But yeah,
so that's what made it funner, because I've only seen you on video. That's what's funny. We've never met in person, so.
And I'll stand up and be fine, but if I stand next to somebody, then that's when they always go, "Oh, okay," because that's like a solid foot over y'all almost, and it's just so much. And it's really funny to see that face, and then when they don't get tired of it, it's like being a celebrity and the person keeps geeking out over it. You're like, yes, I'm tall. Let's move on.
Yes. Yeah. It happens, so.
It's like, I get it all the time. It's okay.
Yeah. But yeah, this is the X Bottom podcast, a podcast where the two of us just chill out, escape for a little bit from real life and talk about games. And I'm here to make the awesome announcement that this podcast is finally available natively through the Apple Podcast app, which has been a long time coming. When we put this podcast through audio services through Anchor.fm, which is amazing, Apple Podcast was the one that just kept refusing. It was like we had it everywhere else: Spotify, Pocket Cast, Google Podcast, you name it, but Apple Podcast just wasn't there. And then I just went to the back end, appealed, and boom, there we are. So if you love listening to podcasts through the Apple Podcast, which as far as I know, only Spotify is the only one that kind of comes neck to neck in popularity, you can now subscribe, leave reviews, say some comments, make it so much easier. Yes.
I sit here speaking to a vacuum with my co-host, so please talk to us. I would love to have conversations.
Yes, and we're always going to be posting every Wednesday, always aiming at 10 a.m. ish Central Time, so it's either 8 p.m. Pacific Time, 11 Eastern Time, wherever you are. It's like, just know that we're always aiming for that 10 a.m. Though this one's going out a little later, because we got a surprise drop that we're gonna mention it later. But before we dive into the news,
always happen. They give us like 24 hours, and that's
exactly
it.
So we made the decision to record a little later, but still we're gonna post on the day. You'll see it when it's live. And before we dive into that, let's talk about what we have not been playing, which is Dying Light 2, Paul.
Yeah.
So last week we said we can't wait to play Dying Light 2, but then I gave us a caveat.
Yep.
Let's see what the reviews are. I was like, the reviews.
I'm glad you said that, because I was like, yeah, it'll be fine. I'm sure they'll get it right.
Yes, we were like, yeah, the review embargo drops on Thursday, but it turns out that was for the YouTubers. That was the embargo for like the skill ups and those kinds of reviewers. But the written reviews came in on Wednesday, and they came in way lower than I was expecting. Like the IGN gave it a 7, like GameSpot gave it a 6. And especially the IGN had like that blue paragraph explaining a bunch of massive bugs that they ran through, including they said that someone that played the PS5 version 30 hours in lost their save. I was like, there is no way in hell I'm gonna play that game right now until I know it's patched. So we dodged the bullet there, Paul. But thankfully, just a few days later, we were able to buy together one of the bigger surprises personally. I wasn't expecting this. Sifu.
I knew it. I called it.
Yeah.
I got worried at that demo briefly, and I'm so glad I held out hope for this one because it's so good.
Yes. I'll say this. It's not the game that I was expecting.
No, I don't think anyone was really expecting what it is.
Yes. It's way deeper than I had ever anticipated it being. Way harder than I was even imagining it could be. Let me just put it like this. Why is it with exclusive games coming to PlayStation in the last few years, especially since the PS5 came out, that are so darn hard? Demon's Souls,
I don't know. I mean, it seems like they've been either subconsciously or consciously collecting talent that really loves that really hard, I don't want to say elitist, but very challenging style of game, you know? But it's been a very different type of game. Everyone always likes to compare things to Dark Souls nowadays, and it's inaccurate. But somebody actually said, I think I watched the Skill Up video, and he made the comparison that it's more like Dark Souls than most others in spirit than mechanic. Everyone sees a lock-on mechanic and the attack button being bind to R1
and they say Dark Souls.
But in reality, it's like both of them have the requirement of almost like perfection. Even Sifu more so than Dark Souls.
Oh yes.
Because you not only need to be, he said, it's like it doesn't matter if you beat a boss at 1 HP or full HP, you've won. But in Sifu, you have to beat them at that level because it
to not screw you over later.
I will say though, I love the fact that it's like a hard checkpoint. It's much harder than I thought, based on what we were all talking about, where it's like, if you beat it, it's always unlocked. You don't have to start the full run over, like have to. It's just, it saves your lowest age at that level that you started at. So I could like keep going over the first one and keep my age down as much as I could. And no matter what it is, that lowest age is always going to be the one leading into the next level. Because I goofed up on the club into the museum, which I was able to get to level 3, by the way.
Oh, you got it? Yes.
I did get through that, and I got through most of it, but there's this spot because I'm like level 60 or age 60 by the time I get into it, and that's just not enough for trial and error. And it's a game that demands a certain kind of perfection I haven't seen in a game, in an action game, since Ninja Gaiden. That's like the closest I remember this kind, because this is a square triangle kind of like combat game that it's very combo focused and very technical in a way I haven't seen a game be since we moved into the Dark Souls style of over-the-shoulder combat and lock-on. There's not even a freaking lock-on button here. No, but I think it succeeds where Ghost of Tsushima failed in that lock-on, where they said, oh, no lock-on, we'll just have it as is. But I feel like I've never really attacked the wrong person with Sifu, where in Ghost of Tsushima, it's like somehow there's like
you'll always be swinging and you're missing that swing. So there's a certain tightness to it. And I feel there's also a certain kind of like dexterity required for your counterattacks that reminds me a lot of Sekiro.
Yes, and I think just from the fact that my muscle memory kicked in immediately, that I was able to almost like, besides that one delay punch that some of those freaking NPCs do on me, I can parry almost perfectly and dodge almost perfectly. Like that hasn't been a problem for me. So that means that between that, the bar, this like, what do they call it? Structure at the bottom, serving as like your stamina more or less for blocking and dodging. And it's like lifted straight out of Sekiro, but I love it because that was one of the mechanics that made Sekiro so fun. Is like you can't avoid, you just have to deflect. You stand your ground, you face that, and then you outlast your opponent and then punish them.
And there's also getting into the mindset that it's not about just doing the quick tap L1 button to like parry. You also have to be holding it to be doing the dodges. That's something that you have to train yourself, because when you get to like the second boss in the club level, the only way to defeat him is not by parrying, but actually dodging and learning when to dodge left, right, down. And that can be a little confusing because you would think moving the stick should move you in a different direction that you should.
Yes, you would think that going up would do your upper body and low
Mhm.
do your lower body, but it's reverse, and that is still messing me up today.
Yeah,
Oh,
and those non-counterable moves sometimes are so quick,
yeah.
like the window is like so small that you can't really see. So you might as well just keep holding L1 and move,
Mhm.
unless you feel, because the good thing is that you can hold it and then tap it, because there's, if this game
Yeah.
does something really well, is be so smooth and responsiveness. That is what's needed to be able to kind of give you that incentiveness of trying to get better. Because I feel action games that pride themselves to be so hard, like the Dark Souls, kind of feel kind of, it's intentionally obtuse, and you're trying to getting to the mindset of the obtuseness to come out on top. It's a different kind of pace, but that old Ninja Gaiden style of action game was all about the quick presses, the quick reflexes, and that's a different kind of action game we haven't seen like in a while. And I think that's why, especially, we haven't had both that kind of quick action game in this style, and we haven't had a martial arts game in the style of Double Dragon, and
There was one game,
there was another one that's it's a street,
Absolver.
yeah, but Absolver's more Souls like.
It was in the adventure sense, but the martial arts feels almost perfectly lifted. Because I played a good amount of Absolver because they gave it away 1 month for free,
These are
and
the
I
same
ate
people.
that game up. I know it's
Yeah.
like they perfected Absolver so well in that movement of it's people. Just to go on my martial arts little segment here, because I have a little bit of experience in it. um People focus too much on the individual moves when lifting something that's martial arts into media, and they focus on the big punches, the big kicks, and all that stuff. Like, you'll notice your character doesn't do a lot of kicking at all outside
Mm.
of the finishers and stuff like that. That's foundation. And I love the details of, there's a lot of movement but no wasted movement, if that makes sense. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of quick, immediate follow-ups. It's never like the media 1 inch punch or the wildness. There's like maybe one move that's a wild kick, and I feel like I can't even reliably use it because I need to stick to my fundamentals the whole time during the playtime. And that's like exactly right, because people focus so much on these wild moves that it just doesn't feel right, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. And it's really more about the closeness, the distance, and managing that at all times. So that's Paul's martial arts minute there. But
Yes.
I just love how realistic it is for what I remember doing repetitions in all of my years doing it. And I
Man,
could
I can't
feel
imagine
myself like,
you being your size doing martial arts. That makes it even funnier.
it was amazing, and I did so much irreparable damage to my body doing it. But for 7 years, I did South Korean martial arts, and it was a heavily focused on like grappling,
Mm-hmm.
because it used Brazilian jiu-jitsu as part of it, and that was what I really liked, because I was obviously so much bigger than other people. I could throw their weight around. But you still learn your punches, your kicks, your falls, your weapons. So like the fact that the staff is one of the main weapons, that was mine,
Mm-hmm.
and I loved that because, oh, it felt so good to use. But yeah.
Now, what are some things that you don't like about Sifu? I like, at least for me. Yeah,
Definitely.
go for.
Yeah. Oh, so off the top of my head, I once the way you dodge is just really strange.
Mm-hmm.
I do wish it was like, I understand they wanted the complexity for it. I get it, but it is very frustrating because there is almost no window to actually respond.
Mm-hmm.
And like, as we've established, I have terrible actual reaction time,
Mm-hmm.
outside of understanding what I need to press in certain moments. And that leads me to taking a lot of unnecessary damage, or I need to plan so that I don't even see those moments in the fights. And I can do that for most NPC fights, but for bosses, you just can't avoid that. So when the boss purposely spams moves that the devs knew would trip you up, that's where I get a little miffed, where I'm like a little upset about the fact that like they know that this is going to mess people up, and they're doing it on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was a skill up video again. They said that so few people are going to even try past the second level
Yeah.
that they're going to miss out on the game. And I feel like that's a failure. Hot takes. Failure on the devs' side, making a game so hard that you can't even experience your game.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's borderline elitist almost.
Yeah, and I don't want to go into that whole debate again because we've kind of talked it through, and it's a little tired now. I think just accessibility
with the whole
is great.
Metroid Dread conversation we had in private.
I don't even know if it is accessibility as much as if you're making a game, you need to telegraph certain things so the audience can respond. Because they say, oh, you need to know the combos. Well, the problem is if the combo starts up with moves that you're not expecting, then that kind of defeats the purpose. You know what I mean? Like if it's a high, high, low, high, you know, high, high, low, high. But if you start off with wild, crazy move that goes low all of a sudden, and then it's just two moves where they go low, high, low, high,
it's
low,
almost
high.
like it's almost like the amazing visual style that they grabbed for this game, which is really cool. I really love how this game looks. It's lined.
Oh, I adore the art style.
Its animations are very jumpy in a way that sometimes they don't feel you don't feel as defined with what you're doing or if you're actually pulling some stuff. And I can kind of see that tripping people up when trying to do some of the combos, which there are a few. Like there's the triangle stop triangle combo that took me a long while for it to finally prop. I was like to kind of know when's like the right time to like stop and all that because of the animation way and how crazy all the enemies are sometimes that come at you.
That's the one that I can never trust, but I love when I pull it off. But
it staggers
I do want
to
it absolutely, and it can catch multiple opponents, and it's really good when you can pull it off. But I didn't have as much trouble usually with the timing because that's a very Devil May Cry thing, and as we know, that's my thing.
Like that.
So I'm used to like the staggered moves because it took me years to mess with that when I was getting into that whole series because I didn't understand what I was doing wrong. But so absolutely valid point.
It's not much the response time but the animation. Like I feel the response time feels right, the animation doesn't. So there's kind of like that slight disconnect. And also a thing that kind of trips me up, I like the perfect unlocks or like the permanent unlocks. Obviously it requires a heavy investment of like you have to unlock this like 5 times with this amount of XP to get. It really angers me that the idols like unlocks, the one that can increase your health and all that, those ones are not permanent, or at least there's like no way to try to make them permanent as the other one. And that's where it creates a little bit of schism between how you can approach some levels, because one thing that this game really does take from some Souls games, including one like Bloodborne, is the shortcuts. Like there's way, if you are diligent in exploring the level, you can find unlockables that whenever you're replaying, you can kind of like shortcut your way into the boss fight if you want to arrive to him. They're all male as far as I know.
So far
bosses. But there's female.
I think the third and fourth are both women.
We'll see.
And then the main guy,
but it's like then going through that, you're also sacrificing, you're getting upgrades like when you do a takedown you can recover more health, or you get more focus, and you get more focus. So it kind of gives you that kind of decision mentality of like, do I really want to go through the whole shebang of enemies again to try to get to those idols, to get those upgrades that are not permanent as I go through, and kind of risk getting older? Because that's kind of like the gimmick in this game, that every time you die, you age. And it kind of gives a counter, and then that counter keeps going up if you keep dying, and every time you die, it like increases the amount of years your character ages. If you really suck at this game, like you can start as a 20-year-old and after one fight you can be a 65-year-old if you just keep like messing up. That happened to me in one of the sub mini boss fights from the second level heading into the final boss, and that can get really frustrating. But if there's one thing this game really does well, is the nirvana of if you just get it right, if you get it so right, that it's just like I did that first level again, like just kind of to try ground out, and being able to go through it almost with a perfectly being able to dodge everything, like parry everything and kill everything, and not losing your life moving into the final boss. And there's a room that if you nail it, you can even get a trophy. We both got the same trophy because you posted it. And those are the moments that it makes you feel, man, the first time I went through this, I sucked at this, but you can feel a certain level of improvement with how well tuned most of the mechanics of this game are, that you feel like you're becoming a better martial arts expert. So I feel it's like pretty good. I'm bigger surprised because if you remember when we did most anticipated, you had it as an honorable mention because you watched the kind of like that demo. I didn't, because I'm becoming more diligent about not looking stuff from games to be a little bit more surprised. That has worked wonders sometimes.
Getting better at it, but because I used to digest literally every piece of media about something so that I could know all about it. It's basically the modern equivalent of reading the instruction booklet as you're going home with a game.
Yes.
And then I realized that I was constantly talking myself out of games because of that, or I would burn myself out on it because I'd get too much into it before the release, and then the game comes out and I'm like, oh, that was it.
To me, the worst part where that happened to me wasn't back in 2011 with both Batman Arkham City and Uncharted 3. I saw so much ahead of time that then when I played those games, I loved them, but that sense of surprise was gone. I was like, dang it, I really did consume a lot beforehand. I shouldn't have done that, because I didn't do that with Arkham Asylum.
Doing that for a long time.
Yeah, so
up till recently.
Yeah, I've gotten much better at that. I think by 2016, I've stopped like consuming too much of games. Like, by the time we were getting to Uncharted 4, I intentionally was like, no, I am not going to watch too much because I want to be surprised, and I'm glad I did, because so many parts of that game hit me much better for not knowing they were happening. So I'm getting much better with that, and also not consuming too many reviews, only seeing what the scores are, and then after the fact going to read, okay, what do people think of this? Or at least getting just more like the snapshot view of things, especially so that we can have more raw experiences ourselves. And I will say, like, still a very big surprise that Sifu was as good as it is. I don't know if I can recommend it though, unless you want to be
situation with Metroid.
Yes,
it's like you got to be really into the punishing, challenging side of things. And I mean, if it goes on sale or something, I would still kind of recommend people try it.
Yeah,
because if they can succeed in Sifu, I think they can play just about any game there is.
Just imagine if this game had released in a subscription service for people to try.
Absolutely.
Yes. Hopefully that's what Spartacus eventually becomes. So yeah, that's, I know we played other stuff, but we really just wanted to talk about Sifu. We got a few things to talk about.
Yes, we do.
So it's time for the news. So
press X
for some news. All right, Paul, as a quick number one, PSA. The first official Nintendo Direct for 2022 is today. The 40-minute presentation is meant to address what Nintendo's lineup will be for the first few months of the year. Switch owners are already enjoying Pokemon Arceus that came out late January, and they know that their next big Switch game is going to be the new Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which is scheduled to come out late March 2022. In a crowded first few months of 2022 with so many releases coming out for both PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, this Direct should at least assure Switch owners for at least half of this year. So this is an interesting one for us, Paul, because we're recording literally an hour before this actually goes live. So we don't know anything. We don't know what's coming up. However, with the magic of editing, we're going to be watching that Direct and we're going to give you those reactions. And those reactions are here right now. And we're cutting in, as promised, in the main episode. We just watched the Nintendo Direct. We definitely didn't finish recording the main episode right a few minutes before this, but we're wizards.
I think we already told on ourselves for that one.
Yeah, we're wearing the same shirts basically.
Yeah.
So Paul, what do you think of that Direct?
It wasn't bad, honestly. I would say, like, I mean, Mario Strikers, shoot, I'm blanking out. Fire Emblem, Dynasty Warriors-ish game, remakes for classic games that haven't been seen in 20, 30 years. I say it's a win all around for a lot of stuff. Splatoon 3 stuff.
Yeah. It was the kind of Nintendo Direct that's not supposed to like blow your socks off. Like, remember
but it wasn't terrible at the same
Yeah,
time.
exactly. Just remember like how exciting the E3 one was when things like Metroid were revealed. We got
True.
more info on Breath of the Wild 2. Obviously, the Nintendo Directs come in waves. I would say this Direct was definitely a better one compared to the one from last February, because the last February one was after a huge 500 plus day drought. So I feel what this Direct did is at least assure those that are mostly Switch only people that at the very least they got games coming. Because before this, I think you only knew about Splatoon 3 and Kirby game, which we saw a little bit more of here, where he's
Yeah.
inhaling cars. It was so funny.
That was a cool mechanic that they added. I'm kind of impressed with them adding some of that. I mean, it wasn't as like seamless, fluid that you would expect from like, oh, it's Kirby and open world. So I was like, okay, good. They're not going really weird with it, you know.
And the return of Wii Sports with Nintendo Switch Sports coming soon. It's the name is not as catchy. I think Wii Sports is just something that
it's synonymous. Like I even was about to text my friends and I was like, I can't say Wii Sports because it doesn't apply, but if I just say Nintendo Switch sports game, you don't make the connection unless you show like a picture. So I realized that their branding was really solid with that, but it's not good for longevity.
Yes. So I'm glad that the new generation gets to play the equivalent of Wii Sports again, and the things they added like volleyball and soccer. I mean, that wasn't really there on Wii Sports Resort, which was the updated game that they released on Wii. So they didn't say much about price, if at all. I don't know if I paid attention to that. So we'll see about that. I mean, the beta is they're doing a beta at least next week on February 18th and 20th. Unfortunately, that's when I'll be playing Horizon Forbidden West. So sorry, Nintendo. Maybe I can sneak in a little break in between, but who am I kidding? I'm gonna be playing Horizon.
Maybe next time, guys.
And that Nintendo, no, not Nintendo, that Disney racing game that looked like Mario Kart, but not really. And immediately when I was watching that, I was like, yeah, it's so funny that everyone else is doing Mario Kart because Nintendo's not putting a Mario Kart. But then they show up and be like, oh yeah, that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe that we haven't put much updates on. We just released that thing in 2017 and it's just been selling like hotcakes. Well, we're finally doing DLC. 48 courses for $25.
I would say the fact that they're promising so many is like, okay, that's kind of cool, but at the same time, my problem is that this is coming at the cost of an actual Mario Kart game. And excuse me. I don't think that's worth it. But at the same time, it's like it is nice that they're coming up with new things for something. At the same time as that, you're going to split the online player base. You're stopping people from getting into the series beyond that. It's just it's a bit of a mixed bag on that one.
Yeah, it's surprising that they didn't just make a new Mario Kart and make it like the Mario Party Superstars, which is basically what that was. So
and throw in all of the maps and just say, all right, full price instead of a $25 game for that. Just like don't even make any changes. Just call it a new game.
But
and I think people would actually eat it up.
Yeah, but this DLC, what it does now, it's make Mario Kart 8 Deluxe the ultimate Mario Kart game, because you have all the maps that they release in DLC for Mario Kart 8 plus the base ones there. Now you got all these 48 ones, and them putting this now in the horrid Nintendo Switch expansion pack, trying to add more value to people to pay that overpriced garbage. It really does make me wonder that if Nintendo's now is gonna be doing more DLC route to games that tend to be more one and dones because they just equalize and stuff, to try to add more value to that, because they didn't remove the Animal Crossing thing. In fact, by putting those DLCs up, you basically and then the Nintendo 64 stuff that they're gonna keep adding, because Majora's Mask comes out this month, and any other game that they put in there, it will pay itself in a way. So it's like it will feel valuable once more stuff is added. It just doesn't feel valuable right now.
And I mean, time will tell about it. I still think it's a pretty scummy practice, but at the same time, if they give us a really good amount of media, I think that it's going to outweigh the initial frustration of it, because I think they just got overstepped where they said, all right, this is the price and we promise there's going to be some cool stuff. But it's like, if you started off like most of the other companies, like Disney Plus, for instance, starting off at like $7 or something and slowly raising the price as they actually got things and reasons for people to stay. I think that's where they should
like proving the value. It's like, they've given you all this content, we're gonna start raising the price like gradually, but you're gonna keep in because we already proved you what we have. Nintendo's basically asking you for the price of everything at once, but they're asking for the leap of faith there. So that's it's interesting to think about, but I can see people that try to twist their knots and justify why they paid the $50 thing. Now with this added, it's gonna be like, well, more value. And I will say though, them adding Earthbound, I still don't know if this is the Mother 3 people have been asking, but if they're doing this, because
it's gonna be like, because Steve, Mother 3 was Lucas with the blonde-haired kid. This was like the original one, so they still have to get through a couple more games, at least putting this one out, Earthbound 2, and then from there, which it gets similarly to like how the Mario games and the Final Fantasy games were kind of named differently. That's not my strong suit. So at some point, is Earthbound, there's a version of it that is the equivalent of Mother 3.
Yes.
Which, if I'm honest, I never really liked the idea for a game.
Yeah, and apparently this game was in GBA, so it makes me wonder if whenever they do Game Boy Advance, if they put it in the online service, because that was the rumor before N64 that they were going to do Game Boy Advance. Maybe that's how they put it in. Who knows? Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I'm not a Xenoblade guy, but them doing a new Xenoblade 5 years almost since the last one, I think that's kind of cool. Like, that's a series Nintendo has. Some people really eat up those Xenoblade games. I like the scale it is. I don't know if it's for me, but it's something. And it's coming out in September. So Nintendo, at least from now until September, they know what's coming up. And don't forget, the Force Unleashed PS2, Wii, PSP games is coming to Switch. That's so weird that a system that's...
I'm shocked about that.
Yeah, a system that's basically slightly on par in power to the PS3 and 360 is not getting that Force Unleashed game. That's what makes it funny. But to be fair, that's a different version of the game, so it has inherent value because PS2 and Wii's are not available anymore. So
I wish that there was like an option for either, but just because they're so wildly different. Like, you would think the game's called Force Unleashed, there's a version that's just objectively better, but both of them were created by completely different studios and
within
decided
LucasArts.
Decided to do such wildly different things. With like the PlayStation 2 and the Wii version doing a much more like action adventure, and the PS3 360 going for like these crazy at the time graphics with the cinematics and
the physics.
Very God of War.
It was the physics. The Force Unleashed was the physics, basically.
Yeah,
that was that's why they couldn't do that in the old versions, because the Euphoria technology was only available on PS3 and 360, and it was the second game in that generation that used that technology. The first one being GTA 4. So GTA 4 added Euphoria. That's why the cars have weird. It's interesting car physics because of that, and why the ragdoll effects of the characters in GTA 4 are different than compared to GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. So that's why they couldn't do it, and I wonder maybe Euphoria just doesn't work on in the Switch, because I mean the fact that they re-announced the Kingdom Hearts collections that they announced back when Sora was put in Smash, that there's still the cloud versions. That's still, these are, with the exception of Kingdom Hearts 3, these are PS2 and PSP games. Come on, like that. How much lazier can you get?
And the fact that it's going to, like, some of the parts of those games, especially in the higher difficulties, require a lot of reaction time, and you're not going to get that with that cloud version.
Not at all.
I mean, like, I'm glad that some people are getting access to them, but it's like a moot point, because there's just better ways to play those games now.
And shout out to the Metroid Dread patch, because what's so funny is that you will see it, and we're gonna try to post our reacts of the actual thing. I was laughing hysterically when they say it's Metroid Red patch, and the first thing they put is a one-hit kill mode, especially
And
after all the
I looked like I was about to break mentally.
yeah.
And then thank God they said, and like
Rookie
experience
mode.
updated, what was it, energy and health for the rookie mode, and I was like, oh, thank God.
Because
Thank
now,
God.
like, because that's the thing. Like, I would love to talk to PJ to see what he says now that they actually added that. To see
I
if
feel
he,
like he's going to walk back and just be like, oh yeah, it's good that they made it.
yeah.
But
I
I
wish
mean,
Zach
we'll
was with
see.
us when that happened because, especially, he's the one that more than you, he really took issue with how hard, unforgivably hard that game got in the very end, and brought
Yeah,
up his like, he is the Dark Knight of accessibility now. Every time something hard that doesn't have accessibility, he like
he
goes to
will.
war with that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a very valid thing, and
Mm-hmm.
I am glad that there are people like him that are able to do that. Because I am on the side of like, I don't have enough passion to really stand up for it every time,
Mm-hmm.
but because like it personally frustrated me on that one, I was able to go to bat for it, but I toned myself down since then because I was just like,
Don't mince words. That ending ruined that game for you after you
it
have
did.
positive things to say. So it's like it's a worthy thing to really mention that.
Right, but I'm not like going to have the energy to like keep talking about it, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Where like each time it's going to be like, all right, I'm going to give you a couple of sentences, do better, and I'm moving on with my life. But
Mm-hmm.
I think there's needs to be people that can really stand by those statements and hold out until those developers respond to it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'll just
And
stop playing the game rather than complain and tell them to fix it.
I will say this. Shout out to Mercury's team for actually listening and doing this because
Yes, good for them.
they could have gone the elitist route of like, no, it is what it is. This is how the game is. And that was our frustration with like the text conversation we were having with PJ, that he was basically being an elitist without being an elitist
Yeah.
about it. And this at least proves that those criticisms were right. I'm glad they did it because Metroid Dread, considering how successful that game was compared to the rest of the series, I'm glad now from here on out they're gonna have a way that people are not as skilled are gonna have their way. There's nothing wrong with difficulty options. It just
I
isn't. There
agree.
just isn't. So overall, decent Nintendo Direct. I feel much better about this one compared to the one from last year, like I mentioned. Forever, I will remain disappointed that Wind Waker and Twilight Princess eludes us still,
Once again.
but that will be my forever hope. I can't wait to see what people thought of this Direct, and those are reactions to it, and now we are cutting back to the regular scheduled programming. And we're back. Man, Paul, that Direct, I hope
Wow,
was
that
something.
was wild.
Yeah, it's a good thing we don't
I-
have we're not so entrenched into the Nintendo ecosystem to really predict what's coming up. Even our
Yeah.
friend PJ, I asked him like, earlier today, where are
Yeah,
you?
he had no idea.
Yeah, he just said something about like an intelligent systems
Which I had
game.
no idea what that is.
Yeah, it's a frequent second party Nintendo developer, so who knows what it'll be, but I would hope that we get some surprises there. So moving on to number 2, Paul. The Microsoft Activision Blizzard saga continues. Microsoft has made some of their Activision Blizzard plans a little clearer today, as they are currently being scrutinized by the FTC for antitrust things. According to Microsoft's Vice President Brad Smith, where he penned a blog post about how Microsoft is going to approach new rules set by Congress when it comes to closed-off marketplaces, he also added, "To be clear, Microsoft will continue to make Call of Duty and other popular Activision Blizzard titles available on PlayStation through the term of any existing agreement with Activision." We heard that with Phil Spencer kind of tweet. However, and we have committed to Sony that we will also make them available on PlayStation beyond the existing agreement and into the future, so that Sony fans can continue to enjoy the games we love. We're also interested in taking similar steps to support Nintendo's successful platform. We believe this is the right thing for the industry, for gamers, and for our business. End quote.
What are
So,
your thoughts?
so here's the thing. If you want to take this the non-cynical way,
Yeah.
this is Microsoft putting in public, as they're being scrutinized over antitrust concerns by an FTC that's very, very clear. They effing hate big tech. And they mentioned that they were gonna like crack down bigger. this is the kind of thing that you put out in public to kind of make the case. Hey, we're not that bad. We're not going to be anti-competitive. The big things that have been releasing over there, we're going to keep them there. In the very cynical way, I was actually watching the Richard Hogue video, his virtual legality he did for this today before we started recording. He said there's a way for you to see a cynical approach to this paragraph and that whole and we have committed to Sony that will also make them available on PlayStation beyond existing agreement, as something saying those games that were already there, they're always going to be available, don't worry. However, it's like that's the kind of PR word salad that you don't want to use to put out there, where in a non-cynical way you're seeing them committing, hey, Call of Duty is always going to be releasing there, kind of like we did with Minecraft, and other big Activision Blizzard titles are going to still come out there. Especially when I say, because we believe this is the right thing for the industry, for gamers, and for our business. So you don't want to say that and then walk that back, because then they're going to come after you. Yeah. So it's also funny, this is coming a week after the Bungie thing, where Sony, without any BS, was like, we're buying Bungie, their games are multi-platform. Clear cut. It's kind of what I told you. It's like Microsoft's really like, even something as this that should be clear, you can always see like tiny tendrils of like, if you want to really be cynical about it.
The way I'm starting to see it with Microsoft is that they are saying things vague enough to see how people react, and then if they can get away with it, then they absolutely will. Mm-hmm. They were definitely trying to do that with this, but they're like, let's see how people react to this, and then we'll see if we can like pull one out from under them. Is the gaming industry close enough to this so that they would notice and read between the lines, or will they just say, oh, okay, we'll just assume that and not say anything? But I'm glad that we made a stink as general internet about it, because they felt like they had to say this. I also see this as the FTC is putting the screws to them, and they're like, let's make something public just so the FTC stops getting really upset about this.
Yes.
Because they're like, oh yeah, we promise we're going to put that out there to everybody. We love gaming. We love PlayStation. Even mentioning Nintendo, which I feel like is a taboo word for Microsoft and Sony. Like, they don't even want to acknowledge Nintendo exists.
To be fair, like, Microsoft has a better relationship with Nintendo than they usually do Sony. I mean, they put Cuphead and both Ori games there.
That's true.
That they're not even on Play.
Oh yeah, you're right, because that was on Switch and PC and the Microsoft consoles.
Yeah, and only Ori is the one that didn't come to PlayStation, but they put Cuphead there, which started as an Xbox.
I remembered that one.
So I would say that the way I can see this happening, especially because there's a certain vagueness to it, I feel this is definitely the Minecraft situation. It's like, you just can't deny how much Call of Duty sells.
Oh yeah, I think just for their side of it, they have to continue it on the other consoles because of the money. By and large, it's just not going to line up in exclusivity. Isn't going to pay off for them the same way.
Exactly, and
as keeping it multi-platform.
And just the idea of like, you keep it over there being sold for $70 a pop, but now you get the chance to put it on Game Pass over here to automatically also grow your service, while not completely cutting off how incredibly popular and how PlayStation centric the Call of Duty run became by brute force over the last almost 9 years. So it's like, it's you basically, why would you say no to more money? Like, why would it? That would be almost professional malpractice when it comes to Call of Duty specifically. Like, I came to terms with Starfield becoming an exclusive because some Bethesda games are successful, and that one is single player enough that you can kind of try to use it to wedge. Look, this is an amazing game that had really cool previous iterations in other franchises like Elder Scrolls and Fallout, and now we got the next big game, the next big single player game exclusive to us. That is appealing for them to like bring them over here. Call of Duty is different. It's a multiplayer juggernaut that just makes so much money. Call of Duty was the number 1 and 2 best-selling game of 2021. Just think about that.
Both games that weren't widely considered great, and Modern Warfare is still selling amazingly.
Yeah, and the new one, and the new Modern Warfare coming out this year.
Yep.
And think about it this way now, like how it breaks down, like for every copy sold, the the first parties, either Microsoft or Sony, would get 30% of the cut of what was sold, and then 70% left over would go to the publishing partner. In that case, it was Activision. Now Microsoft owns that, so every game that Sony sells, like from the Call of Duty brand,
a piece of that's still going to Microsoft.
Yes, they're getting 70% of that being sold over there, and especially considering that how big Modern Warfare was into opening the floodgates for crossplay. Like Modern Warfare 2019 being one of the first big AAA games, not Fortnite, because Fortnite was the first one with that in the free-to-play realm that was like, no, we gotta make everything free-to-play.
Yeah.
And crossplay so that it can have the biggest size available. And that's when Sony was like, no, we want to be all walled up. But then when Call of Duty did it was like, it basically told everyone, hey, if the biggest game in the world, the biggest selling game in the world is doing it, why would you close yourself off from true crossplay? So, and then basically cutting that off. That's why I feel like I always said Call of Duty would be the one from this that would make sense to keep everything, and then everything else would be left exclusive. The fact that they put other popular Activision Blizzard titles here, what that tells me is Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4 are going to be multi-platform.
Yeah.
They're online heavy games. So, and you want your online heavy games to grow. And just the Game Pass factor of it all is like, you promoting it, hey, it's free over here, you pay them over there, it's enough. So, especially for those online only ones.
Yeah, I still wish that we live in a world where we guaranteed that Elder Scrolls and Starfield stay on Sony, but it's I mean, who knows? I could be surprised, honestly.
I'll say this, it's like, because they kind of mentioned how they wanted to keep things that had legacy on previous platforms to remain there, and
which would be nice because I mean the work's already been done for a lot of those.
Hey, they did put Skyrim Anniversary Edition on PS5. They didn't need to do that, so, but they still did. So
that's just our boy doing his thing.
Exactly, yeah. But it's like, not if they were really serious about cutting everything out. So now any new Skyrim update, it's just on the on this platform now.
That's true.
So
yeah.
But it's Starfield, new franchise, and that's how I feel like if Activision Blizzard now becomes like a more creative company that now will do new stuff under Microsoft. Maybe the new stuff that has no legacy everywhere else, that's what they make exclusive.
Yeah.
But previous franchise that require a little bit bigger player bases or established player bases, those are the ones that they're gonna provide, and I feel that's fair, because again, they're gonna spend $68.7 billion in this thing. So, do you want to have something exclusive to you to make your platform appealing? The proof is in the pudding. Exclusives can drive people towards something. So. But right now, because this is such a the biggest acquisition in gaming history, that's why they kind of have to play ball a little. So they want to make this pass through. I feel with, I still say the Bungie Sony thing may have pushed this in this direction because they were very clear, being good guys of like, yeah, this is staying multi-platform. So, so yeah, chess moves. But hey, right, last week I mentioned with the Call of Duty people on PlayStation, I was like, you know when your series finale technically is. With this, I guess the series finale has been punted. If it remains here.
It's truly the Arrowverse now.
Yeah.
It should have ended a long time ago, but it's going to keep going.
Ah, yes. Exactly. I would sort of agree with that. But
yeah, I know. I'm mostly just crashing on one of your favorite shows. That's all.
Oh yes. I mean, Superman and Lois is awesome. So, and that's from the Arrowverse. So.
That it is, and I'm still catching up on that.
Yeah, but new Arrowverse is good. Old Arrowverse should die now.
Okay.
Yeah, old Arrowverse should, like what that was in the pre-Superman and Lois era. That should probably be phased out, and we should get new stuff because Superman and Lois. It's almost insane to think it's from the same universe with how well made it is.
Absolutely.
So, number 3, Paul. On the heels of Sony recently acquiring Bungie in their very unorthodox deal, the company announced during their recent earnings call that they're planning on releasing 10 live service games by the year 2026, and that the Bungie acquisition is meant to be the catalyst that'll facilitate that. In other earnings call news for Sony, they also continue to emphasize that the PS5 is falling behind the PS4's sales trajectory due to the continued semiconductor component shortages, something they see as a continued point of struggle and one that will not be easily solved with the ongoing global pandemic. Even with that, the company has managed to sell around 18 million units of the PS5. So two-pronged news here, Paul. Number one with the 10 live service games by 2026. What do you think of that?
When you really break it down, so it's 2022 right now. 2026 is like 4 years away. So if they were able to put out like 3-ish each year, I mean, I could see them doing like varying levels of budget and focus on different games. And live service is so like vague that you could kind of put anything in that category. So they could say, hey, we're going to put out all these live service games, and it's just games that you kind of know already, or it's games that you wouldn't consider a live service, but because they're going to support it for several years, they're calling it a live service. So I think people put up red flags with this one, but I wouldn't say like concerned as much as the fact that they say Bungie acquisition is meant to be the catalyst that'll facilitate it. That says to me, we're going to take talent from Bungie and help use it for these games. And I'm like, just leave Bungie alone. They've put themselves through too much hell for you to start piecemealing their teams for your other games. And I hate that people keep doing that. And I really was hoping that they wouldn't do it with this. That one sentence makes me nervous about it. But just from the 10 live service by itself, I wouldn't be too concerned. What are your thoughts about it?
My big question is who's making them, and what would be considered a live service. So last week we had a state of play for Gran Turismo 7, and Gran Turismo 7. Yes, that's the thing. I don't care about that game, so that just slipped by.
I want to. That's the worst part.
Yeah,
but I don't.
But that's the thing. Like they decided to make that game online only. So is that a service game now? Is that one of these?
That's what I'm saying. Where when you do stuff like that, it's like with that kind of level of talk, you could argue that any of the recent Hitman games are live service.
They are. They totally are. Yeah.
So it's like, it's like its own thing. But if you could just call it a live service by saying you're going to support it after the launch, and that like means nothing at this point.
And they also have some of the there's some second-party studios that were built that have like PlayStation connection to it. There's this Haven studio made by Jade Raymond, who was the producer of the Assassin's Creed series. Apparently, she's making a game that the game made at her studio is going to be a live service game. There was Deviation Games. I don't remember. That's the name of the studio. That has Treyarch people that left Treyarch to make a studio. And that also has, I think it's Deviation Games. I don't know if that's what it's called. But considering they have the Call of Duty people, that sounds like another service game. The Firewalker studio, that's another studio that they announced a PlayStation partnership with in 2021 that is made by former Destiny people. So that could be another service game. So
yeah, I could see that one for sure.
Yeah, I can see those three kind of fill out, and Gran Turismo being the fourth one. Obviously, Insomniac announced that they were making a multiplayer. They were hiring for a multiplayer game. We talked about that earlier in our show's return. Factions by Naughty Dog, because obviously they've been very open. Yeah. They've been very open that the multiplayer for The Last of Us 2 became its own thing.
Yeah, so, we're like, guys, we swear it's still happening.
Yeah, no, it is happening. It's legit happening.
I know, but it's just so funny that like it keeps like, oh, it's gonna happen someday.
I actually have inside sources confirming that, because I have a friend that works in QA there. I'm not gonna rat him out. So,
man, you're just gonna drop a bombshell like that? Like, yeah, I got contacts within Naughty Dog.
Because I do, but I can't see the name. I'm going to put him in trouble.
I mean, no, I'm not going to ask for that.
We went to college together.
So, yeah. Friend. Man, that's funny, because you never mentioned that before.
He worked on the. He did QA. His first job was doing QA for Last of Us Part 2. He QA'd, the horse riding section at the beginning of that game, and the Rat King. He did both those sections.
What was the Rat King?
That big boss fight with the blob monster.
That's what he was called?
Yeah, the Rat King was that's what it was called.
Oh, okay. No, I
Those
mean
were
that
the
thing was terrifying. I love
yeah,
that.
those were the two areas that he had to QA to death to make sure that it didn't break and all that. And then
Yeah.
he did also some work for the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection. He QA'd the open world in Lost Legacy for it to work on PS5.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so and other stuff that I don't remember much, but yeah, he worked on that. And then he basically confirmed to me that's Factions, it's real. so yeah, that's another one. Ghost of Tsushima did toy with Legends. Are they eventually gonna make Legends another thing? That could be a seventh thing.
Which that was so crazy because they gave that away for free, and it was such a robust system that like if they use that as the basis for something else to like continue that storyline, it would be great because they kind of set up a storyline within it, and then it just kind of ended, and that's it. So it would be kind of cool to see more of that for sure.
Yes, and Sony Santa Monica's new game, the one that Cory Barlog's made, would that be a live service also? Since it's like early incubation.
I really hope not, but
yeah, that's kind of like that. If there can be some point of concern here is the fact that they came so forward and mentioning that they're doing all these live services now, and the last confirmed exclusive we have for the PS5 right now are Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine by Insomniac. Like they actually announced.
Could you argue the next Final Fantasy VII remake would be?
That's not Sony. That's Square Enix. Obviously, it's a Sony. It's gonna be a Sony exclusive.
Gosh,
unless,
I keep forgetting that Square Enix is technically separate from Sony.
But hey, imagine, the market's ripe for acquisitions. Like you can imagine them doing something there. So
I am not surprised in the slightest if Sony bought Square Enix. But part of me also feels like they've strained their relationship recently, based on how Square Enix has been moving around.
Not really, because
I don't know.
Final Fantasy VII is literally an exclusive for them. Final Fantasy 16 is a PS5 exclusive. Forspoken is a PS5 exclusive. So if
what am
anything,
I thinking about that went to Microsoft recently? Besides Avengers, what am I thinking of?
And Avengers had the Sony dealership where they had Spider-Man there.
I mean, yeah, but that was more because Spider-Man was owned by all that nonsense.
Yeah, Spider-Man was not.
That was it. I
I
wouldn't count that one, but I feel like Square Enix has been more okay with other stuff recently for some reason. But maybe I'm just making.
Yeah, I think you're thinking about another company, because Square Enix more recently, that's the one where everyone's like saying they're basically making moves that make them feel that they're already a Sony studio despite them not owning. They're giving them exclusives.
It's basically what's going on with Bluepoint anyway. Or what went on with Bluepoint before.
Kind of, yeah, because it's kind of like a second party thing almost, even though they were like a third party. So I think what's concerning is that Horizon Forbidden West, which comes out next week, I can't wait. God of War Ragnarok and Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine. Those are the only games announced right now for PS5 and and obviously PS4 cross-gen for the first two, because Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine are going to be PS5 only. That are the Sony tried and true first party third person single player game. It does make me worry, is that it? And then this is now the pivot for Sony, at least for the foreseeable future, based on what we know. Or unless live service is turned different, because obviously when people think of live service, sometimes they think Destiny, a looter always online thing.
Yeah.
But then there's the live service of a game like Assassin's Creed Origins and
Valhalla
and Valhalla and Odyssey. That is like, it's not an always online game.
Yeah.
But it's always getting content over time. Is that what they mean? Is Bungie's next new IP that's going to be multi-platform, is that counting here? So it's interesting.
I think they might be flubbing it a little bit personally, because that's a lot of live service games.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Not all of them are going to stick. That's always the interesting thing. But if one of them does, that's going to be very lucrative for Sony.
Right. Because compare this to, what was it, Take-Two's statement of, hey, we're going to put out all of these wild amount of games.
Like this, it's
but then it's like they can count mobile, they can count all sorts of other things with that. But like Sony really can't. You can't call it a Sony game and put it on the phone.
Days Gone people. Is the Days Gone people that moved on from Days Gone is their next game live service also?
Oh gosh, you're right.
MLB The Show technically is a live service also. It's a sport game.
I know.
Yeah,
I know you're absolutely right, but I hate that that's the case.
But that's what's so weird about
it only lasts for a year.
Yes, but that's what's weird about the word live service is that it's basically a new word for game with a lot of online functionality and content.
Yeah. I mean, you could literally have said that about anything that got DLC. It's live service.
Exactly.
What does that even mean?
And you know who we can blame for this stupid name? Square Enix.
The next people? Oh.
No, Square Enix. Because they were the first ones with Final Fantasy 15 after its release. They kept mentioning in earnest calls. We're seeing Final Fantasy 15 as a platform as a platform for live service content that we're gonna keep feeding it over time. And technically, they kind of did for like 2 years, and then everyone adopted that term. The next one was Ubisoft with their games. Yeah, it's like the live service thing. It's so funny. But as someone that principally plays on PlayStation because they loves the single player stuff, this is slightly worrying. At the same time, though, we've criticized Sony for doing one kind of game a lot. So is this them responding to be like, yeah, people have been calling us out that we've been basically doing the same game, so let's try variety now.
I really hope it's something new and that all of our skepticism is unfounded.
I would hope that most of the live services come from like the second party studios more instead of just like the tried and true.
Yeah,
it wouldn't hurt with that, especially with Sony being in such a deficit now against Microsoft with how many studios they have. So before we move on from that one, the idea like the PS5 is falling behind the PS4 sales trajectory, Paul, continues.
I'm not surprised in the slightest. I just hope that they're like understanding that this is just because we just don't have semiconductors and that's just not a thing. So unless they can design a way to make these consoles without a semiconductor,
I don't think they can, because the semiconductor is why it runs so quiet.
They either need to design some new method of stuff, they need to figure out how to recycle technology better, which is a worldwide problem, or they're just going to have shortages for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, this is something that to me it's like it is what it is, but my only concern is, will this keep them releasing things on PS4? Are we still, like, at least from the Sony side, are we still pushing the goalposts now for when the cutoff is happening? Obviously, today we saw 20 seconds of Horizon Forbidden West running on base PS4, just of Aloy running.
Yeah.
But we don't know how that game is going to perform when things get crazy. To be fair to Zero Dawn on PS4, that game performed really well on base console. That's when I originally played it. Obviously, it plays so much better now with the 60 frames patch and PS5. But when is it too much? Like, the console is 8 years old, going into 9 years old this year. Next year, the PS4 turns 10.
Even if it was the same level of stress as other PS4 games, all of that hardware is so old now. I mean, mine even died, and I feel like I took care of that thing like it was the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, mine's still here. My PS4 is still alive and kicking. I have it here in my room.
I am impressed, and
it never died in 8 years.
Yeah. I wish that mine had lasted a little longer, but I think it was a good enough time. That I was able to switch over to the Pro and then move on with my life.
Yeah, I always wonder what it would have been like to get a Pro. I got close to getting a Pro, but I feel it was coming back home when I was in the US and not having a 4K TV that I was like, I'm kind of fine with how things are looking here and how they're performing, so no need for that. But I'm so glad. I think that made the PS5 jump even better for me, because I tell you that boost mode for some legacy titles that didn't perform well, like Killzone Shadowfall, that runs like at 60 frames now without a Pro patch, and same as Infamous Second Son, though that did get a Pro patch, but the frame rate is like a smooth 60 now. It's like I'm so sad that people that want PS5s just can't get it. I'm glad around this time last year I was in that battle. And I'm glad
everyone else, you finally got it in, what was it, May or something?
Yeah, I got it in May and it arrived in July. And I kept that in secret, remember? So
You held on to that one for so long. I didn't. Gosh, the double take I had when you finally revealed that to me.
It's still one of my favorite moments. I'm glad you got to do that with saying you beat Horizon, because I had given hope that you were gonna finish that game. So
I wasn't sure, and then turns out nothing was going on, couldn't play anything, and I was like, I'm just gonna power through, and it turns out I had 2 missions left.
yeah, I will say, if anyone wants to jump into the next gen with almost hassle free, go to Amazon. The Xbox Series S is always there. I keep tabs. I've been keeping tabs for whenever.
I mean, not for Horizon, that's for sure.
Not for Horizon, no. But if you want to like get into Game Pass and at least the next gen stuff, like our friend Josh from our clan, he has a Series S and he loves it. So enough of that. Number 4, yes, Paul. This was kind of a breaking news as we were talking. I saw the tweet by Jason Schreier, so I needed to open that.
I saw you just kind of pop that one in there. I was like, where did that come from?
Yeah, so apparently there was going to be another Assassin's Creed Valhalla expansion for later this year.
Uh-huh.
But apparently Ubisoft is so keen in trying to fill up its game schedule that they turned that expansion into a full game.
See, for this one, this sounds like greed.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we could just turn that into a full game. Yes. Nobody will care.
It says, so I have the article open, so I'm going to read this. Okay. It says, the game codenamed Rift was originally planned as an expansion for 2020's Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but morphed into a full game late last year, said the people, speaking anonymously because they weren't authorized to talk to the media. It will star Basim, a popular assassin character from Valhalla. I don't know who that is because I haven't finished him.
He was one of the dudes you show up when you made like your village, right? Yeah.
Yeah, at the beginning.
He's the guy that like talks to the brother and stuff.
Okay, so it will start that. Popular assassin character from Valhalla. It will be smaller in scope.
Good.
Than recent games in the series, the people said. The game won't be a massive open world role-playing game like previous recent entries, focusing instead more on stealth gameplay, and it's planned for later this year or 2023. I'm flabbergasted. That's what I've been wanting.
This sounds very interesting. Because for one thing, I love the way Basim looks because it reminds me. It's literally lifted from Assassin's Creed 1 style because that was the
from
look.
From Masyaf, right?
Yeah. That was the literal outfit. The gray outfit was the one that your helpers, like the other dudes in the order, would have, and I really wanted one because I didn't like the white outfit that Altair had as much, and I was like, man, I want like the cool gray one. So the fact that he showed up, I was like, yo, they got the exact same outfits, and even like making me laugh about the fact that the main, what was the Ivor, just like flips around the brace to be like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that nonsense, it's stupid. But I loved their entry into it, even though they didn't really show up too much in the story itself. That they had more staying power in my mind than most of the other side characters in that game. And so the fact that they're like, okay, this is going to be, it's like they're checking off things like the WWE meme where they're like, all right, smaller in scope, focused on stealth, main character is the same era as Altair from the Assassin's Creed 1. And I'm like, oh, like it's sounding really good.
Yeah, and because it sounds like the series I fell in love with.
So. I mean, if they can somehow manage to split, like it almost feels like they turned Assassin's Creed into this wild RPG fantasy nonsense, which like it's got its validity, it's got its space, it's just not original Assassin's Creed. But if they can make a standalone Assassin's Creed series and let those people make their main one, I think this could be a new like renaissance for Assassin's Creed if they can manage to hit both of those at the same time.
Yeah. And an extra detail, because apparently Eurogamer also broke some news about this one.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be in Baghdad.
Going back to the Middle East, baby.
Yes. Yeah, because Basim is already confirmed to be from the Abbasid Caliphate, of which Baghdad was capital in parts of the 9th century when Valhalla is set. So,
yes.
I'm glad I can be excited for Assassin's Creed again, because
I just pictured it like modern, like picturing Assassin's Creed 1 with modern look and aesthetic, and all
And
of
with
that good
stealth,
stuff.
yeah.
And just they don't even have to do anything. Let the game be like 5 hours long, but then like multiple ways to tackle assassinations in like one city. I would be happy.
Yeah.
I think I would, honestly.
But what's hilarious about this expansion becoming its own game is that this is a result of what happened to Ubisoft in 2020. Like I keep the Bloomberg article open here. It says that in the summer of 2020, dozens of current and former employees accused the company of facilitating sexual misconduct, leading Chief Executive Officer Yves Guillemot to apologize and fire some of his top lieutenants. But many employees say the company has not done enough to fix its cultural problems. The fallout has prompted many employees to leave. Ubisoft's game production has also struggled. The online game Skull and Bones has been delayed several times due to directional challenges, while Beyond Good and Evil 2, the sequel to a fan favorite, remains in pre-production after at least 5 years of development, according to people who work on that game. A planned remake of Prince of Persia was also delayed indefinitely. The problems have led to a thin lineup for Ubisoft in the coming year or two. In the past, the company has tried to flesh out weak schedules by greenlighting smaller productions, such as 2020's Immortals Phoenix Rising, which is amazing, and this year's Rainbow Six Extraction, which sucks to mix results. So is this the shot on front, like the sexual harassment thing, and like that's how we get our Assassin's Creed back?
They had to just.
Is that why Splinter Cell remake was greenlit last December? Is this the cause? Because I had nothing.
You were telling, and we went over it. Go back, anybody listening to those initial videos, and we were like, if anything that's going to change, it's going to take like a year or two to be greenlit and then come into the public eye. So I think this year and next year are where we're really going to start seeing the results of people starting to speak up in their own creative ways for new ideas. I can totally see somebody being like, hey guys, what if we took this character that y'all love from Valhalla, that great live service game, and then we made advertisements for it about this other thing that's like smaller in scope, takes less resources, and we just kind of do something different. And then they're like, that's freaking genius, man. I don't know why we never thought of that. And then all of a sudden we get Assassin's Creed again. I could totally see somebody doing that, like on the low key, just making that and phrasing it in just the right way that all of the big wigs at Ubisoft are like, oh yes, that sounds wonderful. And either way, this sounds that got my eyebrows raised, and I was like,
and I'm glad it dropped like right as we were recording, because I got the skill up notifications going on my.
Can you imagine if we stopped recording and then we found out about that right after? You'd be so mad at yourself because we're like, we waited for a whole day and we still missed this.
Exactly. So hey, if it comes out, if this Assassin's Creed actually comes out end of this year, at least it will make up for one of my top 10 games falling. So number 5, Paul, one of the first big 2022 dominoes has fallen, according to Bloomberg again, ironically. Sources tell him the long in development Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, originally scheduled for a vague 2022 release window, is going to be pushed into 2023. While the game hasn't been officially delayed by WB Games and Rocksteady, Bloomberg's previous reporting gives it credence. Remember, they're the ones that broke.
It hasn't been officially delayed yet? That's so funny.
That happened with Horizon. They were the ones to break it, and then a month later, we got the official, oh yeah, we're excited to announce that this game is coming in February 18, 2022.
Wow.
Without saying, oh yeah, we're delaying. It's like, that's how they do it, to kind of make it like, yeah, even though you know what's happened. Whether or not the game is being delayed for additional polishing or to prevent it from overlapping with the other DC games scheduled for 2022, Gotham Knights, remains to be seen.
It absolutely is.
I called it. I called this. It's like,
yeah, you did.
It was like, why would you release after 5 years of a drought of DC games? You're two in the same year.
Two of them, yeah, that doesn't make sense for earnings, the financial side of it. Doesn't make sense for the media sphere of it, because then you lose the I mean, that's the reason why they put the Lord of the Rings movies in separate years like that, because it's like, you don't want to give people too much of that all at once, because then they get burnt out on it and they don't want to play.
And they learned that the hard way with the Matrix. Look what happened with Reloaded and Revolutions. They happened in the same year.
Yeah. That was such a shame. Anyway, so I think that it's a smart move on their part for this business wise, especially since Gotham Knights already had to be pushed. It's like that was a foregone conclusion, I think, and all the better to let Kill the Justice League benefit from more polish, even though it looked great already. Let it get more polish, let it come out when it's ready, let Gotham Knights take it until that point, and then it's a smooth transition, high five, go right into it.
What makes this interesting though is that this would now put 8 years in between official Rocksteady games, not including the Batman VR. Even though like Batman VR, Arkham VR was made by the entirety of Rocksteady. That's what the director said, that the entire team came together to do that VR game. And Batman Arkham VR is actually pretty beloved.
It is, but it's not even really. It's like a standing simulator. Mm-hmm. There's not really much going on in it, even though the assets are fantastic, storyline's really interesting, and it leads into a great Elseworlds storyline that got me into the idea of Elseworlds in DC, because I don't think I really understood that until I played that. And
Elseworlds and alternate realities and universes is what DC specializes the most compared to Marvel.
I knew of it, but I didn't understand that it was like an official thing. I just thought it was like, all right, we just throw all these random stories out there and then they kind of decide what happens.
Where do you think Crisis on Infinite Earths came from?
I mean, I just didn't understand that whole concept very well, because that was, I think, in the 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah, Crisis was a 1985 comic done to streamline the fact that they had gotten out of control with all the parallel universes. So.
And the powers of some of the people, because I know that's one way they nerfed Superman, was that beforehand he just had whatever powers the writer wanted at the time.
Yeah, and then post-Crisis allowed them to kind of rewrite it and justify being like, the universes have been reset, so this is like a new continuity. And then they walked that back and brought back the multiverse and all that, because they realized that multiverse storytelling and Elseworld storytelling can sometimes be good, because it doesn't constrain you to a long continuity and can allow creativity to
and you can create and kill characters that you want. The only thing that I've kind of gotten frustrated about is that they are rarely very long, it seems.
Yeah, it depends. There's long-running series in alternate universe. Then there's like pocket Elseworld stories.
Right, which I guess I just need to understand it a little better, because I'll start a series and be like, oh, this is awesome, it's coming out each month, I'm kind of catching up on it, and it was like, oh, it's been 4 issues and that's the end. Where does the rest of it?
Yes.
But I can understand, especially with something as big as DC, it's probably
Anyway, for that I would say always consult on Zach, because he's like on top of that.
I need to always consult with him to be like, should I read this thing? And he's like, no, get this away from me, peasant.
So just to kind of I didn't put this here, at least we know Gotham Knights is in 2022, because during an earnings report, because we have earnings report, Jason Killer, I think was the guy's name, or whoever's in charge of WB, they confirmed the WB games slate that included Gotham Knights, Hogwarts Legacy, and Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. So at the very least, we know they're aiming for Gotham Knights to come out this year. And it was a 2021 game.
Yeah.
If it wasn't ready, and if it gets pushed again, I would be seriously concerned, because that would be 10 years since WB Montreal made a game.
Yeah. I could believe it being pushed later in this year, but not next year at all. I don't think so.
And now the Suicide Squad game has to face off against Spider-Man too. So
yeah, good luck for them. That's
but hey, the DC people get their Suicide Squad, and then the Marvel people get their Spider-Man. Who's gonna be the better game? Let's not even pretend. There's not even pretend. We know which one is gonna. But just imagine if the Suicide Squad game is actually better than Spider-Man 2.
Stop it right now! I refuse to believe that blasphemy in my house. Imagine?
Final story, Paul. This one, literally, it was 5 minutes before you jumped into the call. Variety reported this. The Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit film and gaming rights are up for sale. So according to Variety, an array of movie, merchandising, gaming, and live event rights to Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, The Silmarillion, and the Unfinished Tales of Numenor, Middle-earth, and other titles by author J.R.R. Tolkien are coming up for auction due to the Saul Sands Corporation deciding to sell its majority Tolkien holdings. All these properties are projected to be sold at around $2 billion. The timing of this sale is not suspect at all, considering that the Amazon TV show for The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, is coming out this year. While Warner Brothers still maintains some film development rights to Lord of the Rings through its ownership of New Line Cinema, Variety notes that substantial film rights to the franchise reverted back to the Sands Corporation last year due to Warner Brothers not doing anything with the property for an extended period of time, Should be noted that the 2 video games by Monolith didn't count due to the very specific titles used. Whoever ends up swallowing the new rights for new Lord of the Rings related games and movies is up in the air, and explains why Monolith didn't do a third Middle-earth Shadow Off title, taking their Nemesis system into a new Wonder Woman game.
Man, aren't you glad we didn't record this yesterday?
Yeah, I am very, very glad. Very, very, very glad. It's interesting that we're seeing with Lord of the Rings what was gonna happen to Spider-Man had the Amazing Spider-Man not happened.
I was just thinking about that, because when you said how they didn't make anything, how do you not make something like this? Like something with Lord of the Rings that has not created something negative besides the mixed review of The Hobbit, which I still feel like was a commercial success. I think.
It was. It like monetary,
Absolutely.
a lot of money.
So it's like, why would they let that lax?
Yeah.
What let that lack?
Lapse.
It doesn't make sense to me why that happened, and how I'm wondering how like the Amazon TV show factors in. I'm wondering how the Gollum game factors into it, because I think those, or obviously Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power is using the name for it, but I think Gollum is still using it as well. So I wonder how that plays out, where it's like they can use it because they were already making it and they got the green light.
Makes sense. It's not made by WB. Lord of the Rings Gollum is made by somewhere else. Yeah.
Okay, so it has to be made in-house, and it has to use the Lord of the Rings title, because I remember that's why they didn't use for Shadow of Mordor, they didn't use Lord of the Rings, because they didn't want to like taint the that whole thing, and they knew they were going to be doing sort of an alternate storyline anyway. I feel like they missed out not doing it now.
Yeah, because because if those rights went back to the Sands Corporation and they decided they want to cash out now, when there's like a huge interest in that Amazon TV show, I feel like WB missed out because HBO Max came out too late. The Lord of the Rings TV show was announced around 2018, 2019, around the time Game of Thrones was still like big.
Yeah.
Amazon wanted their Game of Thrones, so they're like, what's the next thing that's similar to Game of Thrones? Oh, the thing that inspired Lord of the Rings. So even though that Amazon TV show was like greenlit in the most cynical of ways, it makes sense why they would do it. It's like WB was just not doing anything. They just had their 6 films that they did, and that was it. And it kind of explains why the Hobbit movies came out when they did, because it was almost 9 years there.
So it's been, how long has it been since the Hobbit movies then?
2014.
That's not 10 years.
Yeah, it's almost 9. We're 80 years away from Hobbit Battle of the Five Armies.
So why is it coming
You know what
up?
I think? So I think this has happened. Actual Lord of the Rings stuff was coming out between 2003 and 2012. Battle for Middle Earth, the Third Age.
Lord of the Rings Conquest.
And the Hobbit was long in development.
War in the North.
With the War in the North, yeah.
That is so crazy how this honestly baffles me that they let that happen. Even Star Wars. I shouldn't say even Star Wars, it's like the biggest property in the world, but like it's like if EA got that rights to it and made only 2 games.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's what's so funny to think about that. It's like, because there was Lord of the Rings content that happened after 2003, and the Hobbit movie came out way later than it was meant to. It was supposed to come out years earlier than it did. Guillermo del Toro was making it. It wasn't until that fell through, but because they already had development, that's when Peter Jackson jumped in. So because that was in active development, I think that's why they were able to supersede. If something's in not active development, I think that's when you lose rights. But because they knew they're making it, they're making The Hobbit, I think that's why they were able to put that out.
I mean, isn't that the whole problem though? They had to rush all the Spider-Man movies because they had to or the Fantastic Four movies, even better, because they realized it was all of a sudden coming up, and so it couldn't just be in active development. I think they had to release something in that year. But either way, maybe it's like not overall the same each time. Maybe it's like depends on the contract.
Mm-hmm.
So that could always be a situation. But I mean, good for Saul Zaentz Corporation just deciding to say, hey, this is ours now. We want to immediately sell it for a lot of money.
Now think about it like this, Paul. All of that is only $2 billion. How much did Microsoft pay for Activision?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so what they were doing, I think, is a bit apples and oranges situation, because Activision Blizzard, they're buying the infrastructure to create more media, whereas this is just the IP of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's just $2 billion less than what Disney bought Star Wars for. It's really crazy what some of those IPs are valued for.
Yeah, I could see that. I would say maybe closer to 3 for Lord of the Rings, just because it's pretty strong, but it really has fallen out of the public eye.
Those still beloved. That's what's so funny.
It's like beloved, but it's just there's nothing recent enough for people, like especially those coming of age nowadays.
Yeah, they don't have reference for that.
Real reference besides The Hobbit, or if they went back to Lord of the Rings original series.
I think it's also funny that Lord of the Rings and Hobbit are literally the same series, but just kind of like how the Star Wars movies were tainted by how people reacted to the prequels and even the sequel trilogy compared to the original trilogy. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is still considered like a perfect series of movies, despite The Hobbit being basically the Star Wars prequels, but because of the different name, you can kind of like do like reasonable ignorance of those things existing for it to not like taint what was there. I'm just curious who's gonna buy the film series. People are saying maybe Amazon's gonna just swallow it up because like it's basically there. I hope not. I don't want Amazon to, but also the trailer for the Amazon TV show is coming out in the Super Bowl this weekend, so we'll see how it looks.
I guess
spent an asinine amount of money on it.
Yeah, and I have a little bit more faith in it because I found out it's about the second age, not the third age.
Exactly. So it's
I
not a
was
retread.
so worried that it was like going to be the same storyline in a series, but I could see how like they're going back further with established stuff that people don't know as much, so they can change whatever they want, or think they can. But there is literal degrees of people who've studied Tolkien's work.
Yes, I just hope that by it being the second age, this doesn't become Lord of the Rings: The Member Berries, because of like, oh, this is a prequel, so we're gonna constantly be referencing what's gonna come up next, don't you guys? So I wonder it gives them enough. I don't know how much material there was in the books to know what happened in the first and the second age. Obviously, the books are from the third age.
Entirely through. So I did some digging on it in general, but this entirely comes from stuff like the Silmarillion, the stuff from Numenor, Sauron's Master, and the idea of Celebrimbor, the actual version, rather than what Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War did. So that whole storyline with those characters, so Sauron's rise to power and the dude before him. But there was some crazy crap that went down. Also, the Gandalf's race of people are more in power and around at that point. So we'll get a lot more of them rather than just Gandalf and his merry band of random weird people, and stuff like that. Of course, you'll have the elves, and they can be the same people anyway.
So in short, you're basically saying that there's a degree of backstory that they can kind of pull from.
There's a good amount of stuff, but it's told as if it's like a history book, so it's not like a story,
a narrative.
It's like in this age.
So it gives them it actually gives them carte blanche to fill that story out from those cliff notes, basically.
As long as they fill certain things that happened, you can kind of move around a lot more fluidly, I would say. But then there's been so much treading and retreading of stuff from Tolkien's work that people are not going to be satisfied no matter what you do. So we'll see. But,
well, I can't wait to see that curious. Show. Yeah, I'm very curious for this Sunday. And before we go, like, Zach just linked me a story real quick as a number 7. So it's just, and I'm not going to go too deep into that. It's just reading the headline. Phil Spencer wants Starfield to be Bethesda's most played game ever.
Oh, no.
So I'll just say this. If you want that, release it on PlayStation. Mic drop. So, Paul.
Yeah.
So, Paul, where can people find you?
As always, y'all can find me at Dork of Art on Twitter. I've got a new commission and new art coming up soon. The new game that I've been working on, Sea of Choices, is coming out on March 21st. We should be having a surprise drop trailer coming out by the end of this month with
Finally,
my
I
art
want to see your art. I really need to see that art in motion.
It's gonna at least have a few of the characters shown in it, but the rest you'll just have to play the game to get it. It's literally $5 on Steam, so go wish list it. So anyway, that's I'm gonna say that one and leave that where it is. Where can people find you?
Twitch.tv/the Slayer Giant, Instagram at Alejandro Segovia 93, and Twitter at @A_Dro and you can find some of my written content at thecriticalcorner.com. I put written thoughts about the big takeaways of the Microsoft Activision deal. So if you want to read that, it's live over there. And Paul, it's been a pleasure, and I'll see you soon.
Yes, you will.
And remember,
press X
to play.
Good night, everyone.
Adios.